BPI traces its founding back to 1851 when it was a license or given the royal license to operate as the Central Bank of the Philippines by Queen Isabella II. You need to go back to the roots of what your business model is and what you stand for as a business. For us at BPI, banking really is a business of trust. The business of taking deposits of people's savings and being prudent when we lend it out to other people who might need it is really built on our ability to judge risk, which means people have to trust us. And when that trust is destroyed, the business model falls. You be upfront with your customers. You don't shirk from your responsibilities. You make it right for your customers. And you be transparent with them. And you do that not only for your customers, but you do it to your employees, you do it to your stakeholders, you do it to your shareholders. As the Second World War was breaking out, I understand that a lot of government treasures were given to BPI to safeguard. And so we housed it and safe kept it. And then after the war, it was released back. Our great stories for many, many years, the Virgin of Zamboanga was missing her crown. No one ever knew what happened to the crown. In the church, the Virgin is there, no crown. When we renovated our Zamboanga branch, we had to rip out all the safety deposit boxes. And there was a safety deposit box of the Archdiocese of Zamboanga. Of course, they didn't have a key, so we opened it, and there was the crown. I remember because there was a big event to recrown the Virgin. And the mayor was there, the Bishop of Zamboanga, Gigi Montinola, who was the president then, and I think Jaime or Fernando even flew. I was very young then, and I was helping my father. My father was into real estate, and I know he had a project going on. Right after 1983, the assassination, there was a lot of capital flight, which caused the currency to depreciate, which caused interest rates to spike. I know as a real estate man, my father had a difficult time because one, the contractor walked out on him. Two, he had to finance his project, interest rates of 50%. It was really tough, and I think during that time, people just had to make do with what they had. Money was very expensive, but of course, if you had cash, the jobo bills give you a very high rate. But of course, businesses had to borrow at a very, very high rate. I don't think it's a situation we ever want to get into again. A conservative bank lasts forever. An aggressive bank will not last. You need to be prudent because you are lending your depositors money. And I think that's what many people fail to appreciate. If we cannot get paid back by our borrowers, we still have to find a way to give the money back to our depositor. The banking industry is extremely solid today. All the banks are very well capitalized. There is a very strong discipline of risk management across the industry. That's kudos to the BSP. That's kudos to Governor Ben, to the late Governor Sting, to Governor Sai, and all the predecessors. They've just built on each other a great framework. It's testament to the professionalism within the BSP. You know, the core group there, the technical people there are very good. One of my nicest experience really is when I first dealt with the BSP as a president of BPI Family Bank. I found them so bright. And I said, wow, it's so good to have bright people in government. I'm hopeful we're close because I've been a big believer in they call it the Credit Information Corporation. That setup, it exists, and it's been in existence for over 10 years already. The problem with the CIC is that it's hard to get data because we don't have a common identification scheme. That's why I think the national ID is the catalyst to this. When you have the national ID, that will spur consumer lending in this country because one, you can track them. Two, it will spur financial inclusion because now everyone has an ID. It will spur consumer lending because we know who you are. And we know that we will tell you that because you will only have one ID for the rest of your life, right? If you default on this loan, every bank will know. So there'll be better discipline. And that data will go into CIC. And that will allow us to have credit scoring, better credit for across the population. My dream is to be able to make student loans, right? Because as a student, you have a national ID and you go to a good school, you can afford it now because I will lend you. Because you will know when you're employed and you don't pay this loan. When you're 30 years old, no one will lend you to buy a car. When you're 35, no one will lend you to buy a house. because you run away from a tuition loan, you'll pay your tuition. People have heard me talk about leadership know that I really think about only three things. And I already put it in poetic form. You must provide aspiration, you must provide inspiration, and you must provide appreciation. You must thank them. If you have the opportunity to say it's a hard choice between two or three, you're very lucky. That means you've trained well, you've prepared well. You always need to know who your successor is, otherwise you can never leave. So for young people, I say if you want to be promoted, make sure there's someone behind who can take your job, because I'm not promoting you if you have no successor. They will never be exactly like us personally, but they must share the same values and they must share the same vision. They might have a different strategy when they take over, they might pivot a little, but they must have the same values. First, we said that we would finance no new coal plants going forward. Secondly, we've made a commitment that our existing coal portfolio we would cut in half by 2025 and we'll bring it down to zero by the end of 2032. And then third, we've embarked on this new program of what we call energy transition financing together with multilaterals and some NGOs, where we will provide financing to investors or to operators of coal plants on the condition that they shorten the life of the coal plant. And so in '97, which was the Asian financial crisis, the bubble of exuberance burst, right? And like all the banks, we had some problems in terms of our loans. When you look at our NPLs then, they rose to very high levels. But against the industry, we had the lowest NPLs. Again, because it's the culture of prudence, of conservatism, of being very, very diligent about our credit exposure. I think the global financial crisis of '08, '09 was not as bad to BPI or to the country as it was in '97. We give a lot of credit to the BSP that really strengthened the banking industry after the Asian financial crisis. It's part of what I want to bring in at BPI to say, let's really be obsessed about the customer. And so we need to strike a balance where the controls are still in place, but the customer feels like they are taken care of. We like to call our strategy phygital. It should be seamless between the physical world and the digital world. Ideally, a customer should be able to do the same transactions on both our digital platforms and our physical presence, like the branches. We are scaling back our physical presence because we're seeing that happen already. We're seeing our branch traffic reduce. We're seeing less and less people using physical instruments. I'm convinced in 2 years we won't have checks anymore. And I'm almost convinced that maybe in 5, 6 years, we won't have cash. They'll all be electronic. But you need branches because people like the face-to-face for advice. Today, branches are like transaction points, service points. We're transforming our branches into what we call sales and education. So people can go in if they have a question, understand, get advice, and then hopefully do everything else on their mobile phone. As people begin to fall behind, you just have to have honest conversations. I think you need to work with them and warn them that they're falling behind. Maybe expectations aren't being met and you try to work with them. I don't think people really fail deliberately. I think people sometimes are just in the wrong spot, may not have had the right support. So even when things don't go well, you need to work with them and say, okay, where else can you go so that I'll give you another chance to succeed. First, really, my father, who always pushed me and said, the only asset you have in life is really your name. You must keep your name clean and pristine. And it's a reputation that will get you anywhere. Doors will open because you have a good reputation. Then great people who have allowed me to just be responsible, like Jaime and Fernando. Just the opportunity to run my business, to do what I wanted to do, and to trust me in what I've done. Mr. Montenola, Mr. Loinas, Mr. Lazaro taught me so much. They taught me to be outspoken, to be willing to question at all times. And I think that's one of the trademarks I encourage younger professionals. Never be afraid to question. Just make sure you ask the right questions.